Hey, what's going on, guys? It's JD Headstrong. I've got a really neat 3x3 piston door to show you today. It's a 3x3, 1 block wide, slime block, honey block, and a movable object free 3x3 piston door. It's relatively fast, but it's definitely not the smallest version out there. I've seen smaller ones, but this is just my take on it. It was actually requested by somebody on my first YouTube video, my 3x3 two-sided piston door. But without much further ado, I'm just going to get into showing you guys how to build this. So the first thing you're going to want to do when building this is just to put out your basic piston layout. That's what I like to do whenever I build these things. Given that the sides are the easiest part, I always start with those because that's where the redstone in my door is the easiest. I've seen some other versions of this where the redstone is more difficult on the sides than it is in mine. The redstone in this one, for the sides at least, is pretty simple. The top's really where it gets confusing because you have that extra block to retract. But pretty much right here, we're just going to be building a double piston extender to one side. This piston right here, the reason it's there is it's going to be moving the center block, or actually this block, over to this block space instead of having it be pulled up into the middle, because then it would no longer be able to be one block wide. And given that that's what I'm going for with this door, it kind of needs to be that way. But pretty much, you're just going to want to build your double piston extender, which I think I built one block too high. So let me just quickly fix that by dropping that there. And yeah, this is the basic piston layout. The next thing you're going to want to do is probably put in the redstone for the doors, the sides of the door, I mean. And you pretty much just have a couple downward facing pistons with a redstone torch on the back, a block above them, and then some redstone dust on top of the block. That pretty much just powers the entire side. There's not really much more to it. It just kind of works. The next thing I recommend doing is putting the bottom of the door in place. So pretty much we're just going to be putting an upward facing piston right there with a redstone torch on the side. That's just going to power that and make this generally easier to work with. Then you put a redstone torch, forgot the name of it for a second, right there. And a block there, and there. So when you power this piston, it will turn off this piston and the side. Next thing you're going to want to do is just put a block there with a piece of redstone dust on top. And as you will see when I flip this lever that I need to place, everything except these two blocks get retracted. So that's already very easy. Now, unfortunately for me, this is where things start getting more difficult to explain. It's been just a hot minute since I first built this door because it was requested, I'd say, a month ago. I just got busy with boat pullers, but the double piston extender is definitely a lot more difficult than the sides of the door because that's pretty simple thus far. Moving forward is where things get difficult, which is why it's that big. We need to worry about getting these things extended at the correct times so we don't end up pulling this piston with this piston, because then stuff would get moved where it's not supposed to be. We'd have a lot of issues. Normally the redstone would just break itself, but this door doesn't do that. I'm just saying that's why this top section is so much more confusing than the rest. So you're going to want to put a piston facing downward in this block space here, like so, and then putting a redstone torch on the back. That is going to be allowing you to move power upward more easily without powering this when it's not supposed to be. Yeah, the next step, I believe, was putting a block here and there with a 3-tick redstone repeater on its back. Okay, good. So I didn't derp up. I had to quickly double check that because I thought I might have made a mistake, but I didn't. So the next step is just going to be putting a redstone lamp right there with a piece of redstone dust on its face and a torch right there. Then we're going to put an observer facing that way, coming out of it, and I believe after that it's a block behind it. I'll let you know in the next clip if I did manage to mess that up as well. Yes indeed I did. It's actually not a block. It is a 3-tick repeater on top of a downward facing observer. So I don't remember exactly how far this will go when we retract. Okay, so that's like the latter half of the double piston extension. I think the stuff on the left is going to be what allows it to actually get the extension to begin with. Gonna have to quickly double check on that, but I think we're going to start on that side now because that'll allow us to actually start moving some of these blocks. So the next step is going to be putting in this little bit right up here. We're going to be putting a piece of redstone dust there with an observer facing that direction on its back. We're doing this because we're going to need to be moving a lot of redstone power in this area, and this is essentially a dual edge monostable circuit. It does different things during different phases of the activation. Going to put a redstone dust there. And that's going to be the bottom part of this. I'm pretty sure that is the retraction of the door, like when it's pulling the blocks back, because that's going to be necessary for actually being able to open the door. And I just realized, I forgot to show you in the last scene, at this point, it does actually continue to, like, it does actually fully re-extend. Though it only partially opens, it still fully extends. So if you do test it at this stage, you're not going to break it. Just thought I'd let you know that, because I almost freaked out when I realized that. And with a simple redstone line put right here, I think that pretty much finishes the extension of the door. I might be wrong. So if I flip this, you'll notice that things actually start happening. Now, this is good, but quite obviously we're going to need to fire something else to get this piston retracted again. That's not that difficult because it's like we got this big spaghetti redstone ball. Naturally, we're going to have some movement at the correct time. Okay, so next, this is going to be for the continued retraction. We're going to put a block on the back of the piston with some redstone dust on it, and then a upward-facing observer on top of that. We're going to place that there, and I believe a block there. I'm going to have to double-check that again, because, again, it's been way too long since I built this. As I guessed, I was incorrect. You actually need to place a dropper facing really any direction right there. I just faced it that way because it's a little bit prettier. And then an observer facing that direction with a piston on its back. Then from there, we're going to place a block. Let me quickly grab some better color wool because I'm trying to keep this relatively color-coded. Not just a piston, a sticky piston, I'm sorry. Facing that direction with a block on its face. And then an observer facing downward. Now, the reason we're doing all this is we're going to kind of have a dropper line, like the droppers are going to be firing, the observers detecting it, to move the power around this way without activating this redstone line. I should have been pointing that at all, because if we did, we'd end up refiring the top piston when all we really want to do is refire the bottom piston. It's just a little bit of a simple thing, but it's definitely important for this door functioning. And just so you know, this actually still it functions to this degree. All we need to do is move this block one bit farther back. It took me so long to develop this next part of the circuit. I was beginning to get disheartened by how long it was taking, but it still functions. It opens and closes. Now all we need to do is get that last block moved out of the way when it is fully retracted. And at this point, completing the door is actually quite simple. All we need to do is place a dropper there with a bit of redstone dust on top, and that is the door completed. Now all we need to do is flip the lever and the entire thing will open, and you flip it again and it will close. Now, in my original design, I ran the output, or the input, via a T flip-flop. All you really need to remember is that this redstone dust on top of the block is what you need to power, and you'll be able to power the entire thing. It's really not that confusing. I mean, the top half is a little bit of a spaghetti redstone deal, but it's all good. The number one thing you're really going to have to remember, though, is this block right here has to be a solid block. If you replace it with anything that's not a solid block, say an observer, just because that's what I have in my inventory, it'll move out of the way, but the center block won't retract, because I'm powering this block during the retraction phase to move that center block. It's just a small detail, which is definitely going to be helpful to remember. You can place blocks in all the standard spots, like there, up here, and your door will still function. It'll just look much, much prettier. You can place blocks all the way around on the front and back. It won't affect anything because it's one block wide. And again, it'll just make it look nicer. Definitely recommend doing that if you're planning on putting this in a base or anything. But I'm happy with how this turned out. So I'm going to be putting a materials list for this in the description of the video. If you end up using it, let me know how in the comments, because I had a lot of fun building this, even though I will say it was kind of stressful and pretty annoying trying to move that last block I needed to move. But now that it's designed, I think it's a really neat design. If you end up liking it, remember to leave a like on the video and definitely use the build. Again, tell me how you used it in the comments and your experience with building it, because I haven't tried building this in survival mode yet. It's just a little bit of a beast, but you know. So remember, if you liked the video, remember to leave a like, and if you want to see more stuff like it, definitely subscribe. Yeah, definitely comment anything you want to see me do as well, because I'd love to hear from you guys. And with that out of the way, I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya!